I'd be surprised if that sheep manual we heard about a little earlier didn't include a section on Old Man Saltbush. Its ability to survive droughts and thrive in the most saline soils has made it a mainstay on many grazing properties, not least of which is a handy fodder supplement for stock. Now scientists are discovering the meat produced from saltbush has some remarkable eating qualities too.
This is the ancestral stream of the Murray River. It changed course many millions of years ago, so it's about 30 or 40 feet below the rest of the countryside. And being a low-lying area and the water couldn't get out of the area, it started to salt up.
It's yet another tough season in the southern riverina. The grass seed in the hard-baked earth awaits renewal with autumn rains. But these prime lambs are fat and content, and they're thriving despite an unseen enemy whose poisonous presence threatens an estimated 2 million hectares Australia-wide. Salinity stalks this ancient floodplain from below, and Old Man Saltbush, one of the wonder plants of the Australian bush, is keeping it at bay.
It's one of the only plants in the world which can actually take salty water through its system, and it takes the salt out of the water and puts it into a couple of sacrifice leaves on the plant, and then the rest of the plant can use the pure water or cleaner water, and it enables it to grow on. As it lowers the water, the natural rainfall washes the salt back out of the soil, and hence improves the land dramatically.
Saltbush, sometimes called bluebush, was highly valued by the early settlers for its hardiness.
Once it covered vast tracts of Australia's inland. It can withstand drought better than almost any other plant, but it couldn't withstand years of relentless grazing pressure and prolonged drought.
Nowadays, remnants of this once prolific plant are most commonly seen in roadside reserves.
It's interesting they don't tackle the younger plants very much because the extra salt loads that the young plant has in for its protection, isn't it? Yeah.
For the Mears family, whose 2,500 hectare property flanks the northern bank of the Murray River near Moama, some exceptionally wet years in the early 1970s proved catastrophic. Land clearing decades earlier had removed the large trees and scrub, and the ancient, now flooded floodplain released its deposits of salt. Low-lying areas were soon gasping under a rising poisonous tide.
When this was first planted, you couldn't drive a ute or a tractor or anything across it. It was that wet. So it's made a radical change.
Rob Mears embarked on a radical plan based on drainage works he'd seen in Europe. He didn't realise it then, but 15 years down the track, his daring drainage scheme, known as tile drains, has quite literally underpinned the property's prosperity.
Tile drainage works, you've got your main drain going down here, and you can either have that as an open drain, which we have, or the drains they're putting at the moment, the newer ones, that is a large poly pipe. And from the side you put your tile drains. In this case they were 60 metres apart, going like so, and the tile drain is a 4-inch slotted poly pipe, and it's when the pipe goes in to the ground, it's then covered with stone, and the water just percolates through the stone into the poly pipe and into the drain. After the tile drainage is put in, the water table just drops 4 or 5 inches a day, basically. It just disappears overnight.
As the newly drained soil slowly sweetened, the Mears planted saltbush, about 1.3 million plants, starting in the early 1980s. It was a costly investment, which is now bringing rewards beyond measure.
We lowered the water table with the tile drains and the saltbush, and as you can see now, it's a pretty amazing sight.
The saltbush has been our saviour. In these dry years, we've been able to keep our breeding flocks and our numbers high, when most people have had to eventually give in when feeding costs were too high, and we've been able to carry them through and continue production. Besides the water level dropping, just the seed regeneration in the areas of land we haven't planted down, with the wind-blown seed, we've got paddocks that nearly look like they've been planted down now, which is fantastic.
And there's a growing gospel of support, really.
Yes, well, we were criticised really for what we were doing in the beginning, and years later that was a recommendation they've come up, the CSIRO and water bodies have come up with. That was a way to fix it.
The property is now a showcase and proof that salinity can be reversed.
We've had people fly in from Asia, all around Australia, overseas over the years, double-decker buses, the works, giving talks and scenarios and showing everyone around.
Years of drought in the Murray-Darling Basin have also brought enormous changes.
This is our third year with zero allocation. Yeah, the property was typically irrigation, lucerne, cereals and so forth, and the whole place was generally green even through summer. You know, in the last 7 or 8 years it's been that dry. It looks like a bloody desert now. So, yes, we've had to diverse and change, but it's pretty hard on an irrigation property without any water, so, yeah.
So the saltbush has been a godsend. Today, another draft is being mustered for market.
We've had a decade of dry years, and you can see the amount of feed that's out there, and it can run enormous numbers of sheep. It's high in protein. The sheep do very well on it.
Just how well is being scientifically evaluated at a trial plot of saltbush here at Yalluring, a few hours' drive southeast of Perth.
At this site we wanted to show that saltbush provides environmental benefits as well as allowing greater animal production throughout the autumn period. We're bringing the animals in on a fortnightly basis. We're monitoring live weight and condition score. We're also taking a wool patch to measure wool growth and to try and demonstrate how much more wool growth we're getting from the saltbush system. We also take blood samples to monitor indicators of animal health and to monitor their vitamin E. And we're also using a carbon isotope technique which tells us how much saltbush each individual animal is eating.
This trial is one of 8 similar research sites across Australia, funded by Land, Water and Wool and the CRC for Future Farm Industries. The early results are exciting.
Saltbush is an amazing plant because it survives in places that other plants simply can't grow. It tolerates very high levels of salinity, and it's native to the arid and semi-arid range of Australia, so it's very tolerant of drought. We've seen that given 90 millimetres of rainfall, you get the same growth as 270 millimetres of rainfall. It's also amazing in terms of animal production. This system here, we can quadruple carrying capacity through autumn. We think we're going to get a benefit in terms of wool growth due to the high sulphur, nitrogen and high salt in the saltbush, all linked to improved wool growth, and that's what we're trying to demonstrate here this year. It's also full of vitamin E, and a recent study's demonstrated that 56% of weaner animals in southern Australia are vitamin E deficient through autumn, and saltbush within 24 days can lift those animals from deficiency to having sufficient.
Returns range between $3 to $110 per hectare, and deep-rooted perennial shrubs provide forage and shelter for sheep during the lean months, help reduce soil erosion and lower salinity risk. Saltbush is one of about 20 native perennials which scientists believe will play a greater role in farming in the future. There's even early evidence to suggest these plants act as functional foods, helping to control internal parasites in stock. And the meat from saltbush-fed animals has some other qualities.
Most comments you get is how tender and juicy it is. And it's unique flavour. Most chefs, when they get the product, aren't doing much with it at all. They're just cooking it without too many sauces or so forth and leaving it natural. It's speaking for itself, really.
In the nearby Victorian border town of Echuca, Mears Saltbush Lamb is a signature dish at a popular restaurant.